for checking out another one of my videos. Today I am going to try to bring you a video that's a little bit different but also in the same category as my normal videos. I've gotten this question a few different times throughout the last couple years, both here on YouTube and on Instagram. The most recent was from a college grad who asked me how I can give her advice on saving and being able to afford luxury items along with all the expenses that come along with just graduating from college. So Mohima, hopefully I don't butcher your name too much, congratulations on graduating, and hopefully you'll find this video useful to kind of start building your collection. I think as we get into more and more luxury items, we realize very early on where we want to spend our money. And I think that's really, really important. But I also think it's important to kind of have a lot of structure in your finances. And so I'd like to give you guys some of my tips and a few tricks on how I was able to save and afford to have the collection that I have now. So let's get started. Tip number one is something that I actually did not learn right off the bat. However, I think it's super important, and I wish that I realized 10 or 15 years ago how important this was. Number one, I would say don't get into debt buying luxury goods. I think if you can't afford to pay cash for something, especially a luxury good that is not a necessity, don't get it. I do think, with rewards points, I have a Nordstrom's debit card, and I also have a Saks credit card. I love earning points on items. So I do think that if you purchase something with a credit card to get the rewards points, I totally understand that, but just make sure that you have the money set aside so that you can pay it off right away. Tip number two is set a hard budget. I think especially when you're newly in the workforce, you're trying to figure out where your money goes. And when you go from getting a very minimal paying job in high school or in college where you're working part-time to getting real, what I consider big girl paychecks, it seems like you have a lot of money. But I think that setting a really hard budget is such an important thing to do. I think that when you figure out how much you can and do need to save for having your rent paid for or your mortgage, for knowing approximately how much you spend on food every month and your other bills like phone bills and internet and cable, if you have a pet or if you want to put away money to save for a house, I think knowing exactly what you are realistically going to spend on all of those things is very important. It makes the next step very easy to do as well. Number three is tracking all your expenses. And I am a little bit anal about this. I save every single receipt that I ever collect. I am very, very anal about putting them all into a log. I have created a spreadsheet on my computer where I pretty much match any of my debit card, my credit card statements, my PayPal statement. I also will kind of import any cash spending that I have. But at the end of the month, I am able to generate a pie chart, I guess, that kind of shows me exactly where my money went. I can look and say, wow, I spent a lot of money this month on food, or my bills were really high this month. This is not normal. Why was that going on? Or wow, I'm spending a lot of money on vacation or extra expenses. I think that by tracking exactly where your money goes, it's a lot easier to, at the end of the year when you get that tax statement and you see, wow, I made that much money this year. Why do I have nothing left? It's easy to see that when you actually track everything. I also think that this was so important for me at a very, very young age. I think it actually started with Microsoft Money, which I don't even think they make anymore. But everything that I did when I was, especially in New York City or in college, was writing checks or using a debit card. And I think that, back then we didn't have the online access and the online banking that we do now to be able to track it as closely as we did. So I made a really, really good attempt in my balancing my checkbook and that kind of stuff. And I was able to see what I was spending money on that I didn't really need to or want to. And one of the biggest things was when I lived in New York City, I was newly 21 and most of the people that I was there with were also of that age. So I think that on weekends, a lot of times they would go out and I would go out occasionally with them, but needless to say, by the time you pay for a cab, you pay for dinner, you pay for a couple drinks, at the end of the night, I would come home and say, oh my goodness, I just spent over $100. And the next morning I wake up and I kind of feel lousy. Not only am I upset that I spent that much money, but I also was tired and a little bloated or hungover or whatever it was. And I realized that was not the way I wanted to spend my money. So my girlfriends would go out. I, a lot of times would go with them during the day. I would hang out. And when they went out, I would end up somehow walking up to Macy's. I lived near Madison Square Gardens, and that Macy's was like my heaven. I still love the way it smells, and I would go up and they would all, be out doing stuff, and I would go and kind of buy a new MAC eyeshadow and have one of the associates, usually on a Friday or Saturday night, they weren't that busy, and they would kind of show me or teach me how to apply it or use it. Other times I would just spend the days walking the city, which was free, and I think at the end of my time in New York, I ended up with so many great items that I hold really dear to me. I think I look back and I don't regret for 1 minute the way that I handled my money. I do think that my friends all had a great time, and I'm sure they have amazing memories from that as well. But for me, I realized that money and things hold more quality when it came to just simple nights out. Now, I do love going on vacations. I love trips. I love experiences, but that was just the way that I chose to spend my money while I was in college. And I also think that tracking your spending is super important now, because I'm able to see, can I actually afford to go on this trip, or what do I need to do to be able to afford this new bag that I want? So I think that by far, tracking the spending is such an important thing. It makes you just really aware of what you're doing. And number 4 is setting up a separate account. Now, when I first got my first job, I had direct deposit. I set it up to my primary bank account, and with that, I also had a savings account. But then I set up a second one, and at first I put in 10% of my paycheck. I did it in the thought of, this is gonna be the money that I can spend on other things other than groceries and bills and my normal day-to-day or week-to-week, month-to-month costs. This was kind of going to be my fun money. And I think that it ended up, later on, I realized that 10% was great, but I thought that I could actually afford a little bit more. At the end of each month, I realized I still had a little bit in that original bank account that was just left over. So I decided to put a little bit more into that other account. Now, this is also important, I think, to have a spending savings account, and also have an account set up for retirement or for, bills if you happen to lose your job, or if you have to fly somewhere on a really short notice, or, you need to have a savings account. But I think that having even a separate savings account for your fun things makes it a little bit easier to kind of keep that money away and not be tempted to spend it. Number 5 is trying to spend more cash. Now, throughout the years, I've read a lot of different finance books. I come from a family that was so amazing, but we never really talked that much about finances. When I started to realize that I was slowly getting into debt, I realized I didn't want that at all. I didn't like the feeling of guilt. I didn't like the feeling of having to pay back money, which I don't even know where the money went or what I purchased with it. So I started to do a lot more research, and I found that there are certain people who have great podcasts. Now there's so many more resources. I think back then I read a lot of books, but now I actually do listen to some podcasts. I know Dave Ramsey has great advice, and one of the big things that I liked from him was the envelope system. And this is also kind of going into my next thing, but also just spending money, the money that you allocate for certain things, makes it easier to track. I think sometimes when I have $20 of cash and I'm deciding, for that week I'm only spending cash, and I want to go to the grocery store or Target, and usually I don't leave Target without spending $100. So I'm very careful about tracking how much everything is when I put it in my cart. If it's only $3, okay, yeah, I can afford that. Oh, that's a little bit more than the cash that I have. So I think somehow when you use a debit card or a credit card, I feel like the money is kind of out there somewhere, but it's not right in your hand. So as much as I don't like carrying cash, I do think that I am financially more responsible when I do use cash. Okay, the next thing is something that I actually saw on Pinterest when Pinterest first started, and I have absolutely loved this. I call this my $5 savings plan. And I've heard people who have done $20 savings plans, or, even a dollar saving plan, whatever you want to do. But when you use more cash, I found that $5 are kind of insignificant. They obviously make a difference when you add them all up, but individually, a $5 bill, yeah, I can buy you a coffee or maybe a quick lunch or a drink somewhere. But ultimately, having a $5 bill in my wallet didn't make or break me. So I started to fold up my $5 bill and I put it in a separate pocket in my wallet. And I still actually have that pocket in my new Sarah wallet, which I love that there's a pocket dedicated to my $5 bills. But needless to say, whenever I got any $5 bills, I put them away. With this $5 savings plan, I was able to afford a really nice computer. I think I bought my first Mac desktop with my $5. I also was able to I used a lot of the money towards my Totally. I also used the money for a new Canon camera. I think right now we're trying to kind of save the money towards a vacation, but needless to say, and of course now I've got my boyfriend on this trick too, but whenever I have a $5 bill, I will not spend it. Sometimes I find myself getting a little irritated if I hand somebody a $20 bill for something that maybe was only $3 and they give me 3 5s back and some ones. And I think, gosh, now I just wasted $20 on a $3 drink. However, I will not spend a $5 bill. And I think that that's a great way to save because you don't really miss it. And at the end, you're going to realize, wow, it was really easy to save up cash when I wasn't even trying. Along with that, I also do put any extra money that I somehow manage to get away. A lot of times I will cash if it's a check for my birthday that I get, or if it's a bonus check from work, or I pick up an extra shift. And with my line of work, sometimes I'll get asked to do a random commercial or magazine shoot that I wasn't originally planning on, or it wasn't in my budget. So a lot of times that little extra that I don't necessarily need to pay my bills or to continue to have the life that I, normally would have with a normal paycheck, I tend to cash that and also add that to my $5 savings plan. Or I just set that money aside and put it in that other checking account so that it's just kind of bonus money. So I think any additional things, whether it's selling stuff on eBay or, there's so many different ways, having garage sales, helping friends with things. Anytime you have a little extra money that you didn't plan on, set it aside and it makes it easier to buy things. My last piece of advice is to never feel guilty for the things that you're buying. I think that this is super important. When I did put a purse or a bag on a credit card, I loved it. And the first couple weeks, I really enjoyed it and I thought this is great. And after a month or so, and I would see that still on my statement or my credit card statement was still kind of high, I started to feel guilty. Like maybe I shouldn't have bought that, or maybe I shouldn't have bought it in the first place if I didn't have the money for it. So I've realized that if I set aside money towards a particular thing, whether it's a purse or a vacation or, I really wanted this pair of shoes that just went on sale, and if I use the cash that I set aside as kind of my fun money or my spending money, I don't feel guilty for it. That is what that money was put aside for. It was so that I could do the things that I wanted to do and not feel guilty for it. I think this is such a huge, huge thing, especially in the luxury items purchasing kind of world. I think that when we buy things and we do feel guilty for purchasing them, it makes it kind of a sour taste in your mouth. Whenever I look at the bag, instead of feeling happy and excited because this is what this thing meant. Instead, it kind of brought this negative feeling. And I do feel like there are many things that I've purchased that I don't necessarily love or I kind of regret after I purchase them. My handbags and my luxury goods are not one of them, mainly because that money was set aside to buy those items. And I just think it's more rewarding. It's so rewarding to go in and buy something and know this is what I've saved so long for, and here it is. A few other things that I do that I think could be helpful for others is landmarking special things in your life. Whether it's getting a new job, getting a promotion, going on an amazing trip or vacation, whether it is for me certain jobs that I have that are just very, very meaningful, I'd like to buy something to remember them. And I think that this was such a great idea. Years ago, I decided that I wanted to really landmark things, but I also wanted things that I'd be able to pass down if I ever have kids, or if I have, nieces that really love purses. I'm able to kind of give them eventually and say, this is what I bought when I did X, Y, and Z. And I think that this also makes each of my purchases a little more special, and it also keeps me from kind of just buying randomly. I feel like if I have a reason to celebrate or I have something to landmark, it makes it a little bit easier to spend the money, and then I don't feel like I'm just buying new purses because I like the way they look. They all have meaning, which I think is also something that is a little important, and it keeps me from going way overboard. I hope that you guys all find this very useful. Like I said before, leave comments below with any other tips or suggestions that you guys have on how you afford luxury. I think that it's important as us women, of course, I would love to have a husband or a boyfriend that completely spoils me, or come from a family that has money, and when I say that I want $1,000 purse, they say, oh great, I'll get it for you for your birthday, or go ahead and go buy it. I'll pay your credit card bill. I think that all sounds amazing, but let's be realistic. It rarely happens, at least from my point of view, my friends, my life. I'm responsible for all the things, especially the luxury items that I buy. And I think that knowing that, I think as women, especially if we start off really at a young age, appreciating the goods that we do purchase, when you work really hard and you get something, it's a little bit more meaningful. And of course, I wish that I married or was able to marry somebody super rich that would just say, oh yeah, let's go off to this place or go buy whatever you want. That's really great. But I also think that I have such a better appreciation for the things that I've purchased, because I know that my money went to a good place. I worked really hard to make the money, and I made wise decisions. I still enjoy the items that I got. Hopefully you guys find this video really helpful. I look forward to hearing any additional comments, and for anyone who is newly graduated, congratulations. I also think that if you are now in a position in your life where you're starting to realize you have a little extra money, I hope some of these tips will help you to be able to afford the collection that you enjoy. Thanks again for watching, and I look forward to seeing you guys soon. Oh, my Help Find the lid. Such a difference. No, not Facebook. Coming to you. I always say that and I don't know why. I'm Nate. I hope I can actually see my cheat sheet. Oh, let's try that again. I'm totally gonna butcher this name. I'm so sorry. I thought. Let's try that again. That's not what I went. My totally. Or my computer, I forget. I don't remember. Let's try that again. So if that makes any sense, I don't know if it's any. I have no idea.